August 2021. Here we have Rauta channel preparing for the very first live gig since, I don't know, almost 18 months. And as it so happens, we have a Finnish black metal band, actually the very same city, Turku. Mormant de Snagov is the name of the band. Band that has 3 albums out, 4 incoming and all that stuff. But we're gonna talk about that in a little bit later. First, let's introduce these fine gentlemen. Guys, who are you and what are you doing in the band? Let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm Miska and I'm the lead singer and the lead guitarist of the band. And songwriter, lyrics writer, you could say the mastermind of the band.
Yeah, I'm Ville. I'm a newcomer in the band. Basically, I started as a new guitarist in the Mormant de Snagov, but of course, I've been, playing with Miska like 20 years, in a couple of bands like Sheer Meadow and Malefic by Design, so obviously we know each other quite well.
Yeah.
He's a bastard, I'm a bastard,
Alright, the thing with Mormant de Snagov is that it's rarely mentioned among those Finnish black metal names. I mean, you have those household names such as Horna, you have names that say the Warmaster and the like. But why are you guys that often so-called on the map? On the pages when the Finnish black metal bands are mentioned. You've been, anyway, more than 10 years, 13 years roughly, give or take. So why not? Why are you more in the underground, so to speak?
Good question. If I knew the answer for that question, I would say we would be in those part of those household names. But I don't know, maybe we haven't been, maybe we're not that interesting, maybe we are just so small band, I don't know. I would say, good question, hard to answer.
You don't have the so-called Finnish black metal sound or melodic ways, with the gear leads and melodic riffs, even though you're more or less kind of a melodic black metal band as opposed to kind of a raw end or symphonic black metal or so forth, like Verse Wave or Black Trash. So whenever we start to categorize, you would fall into the melodic parts of black metal. But how come you're not sounding so Finnish as most of the bands operating from Finland?
Well, I would say that first of all, the reason why we are, or we think we are a black metal band is more in the context of the lyrics and not the music itself. We kind of think the music very broadly and we like to expand the boundaries of the generic black metal approach as far as we can. We like to explore different areas of the music, and that probably is one of the key factors why we don't sound Finnish, or in some cases might not sound black metal at all. And it's then up to the listener if we are black metal or if we are just an extreme metal band. I personally think that the lyrics and the content of the lyrics is a very important part of being a black metal band. And also, of course, the musical part has a big role in it. And on our third album, we already started discovering areas that are pretty uncommon in that scene. So that might be the reason. We are curious. We go where no man has gone before.
That's a Star Trek reference, by the way, you nerds out there. All right, before we get into the lyrical section and the ideals and all that stuff, your name is also something that kind of pops up as a very different name. It's not very typical. It's not, first of all, some people out there are like, is it even Finnish? No, it's not. It's very different, like band names such as Horna or band names which are very clear in a way of like describing hell or otherworldly aspects like Inferno, whatever. But it's not even very satanic or anti-Christian as such. It's not revealing anything. So what is the story of the name and what it's supposed to mean?
Yeah. So this is a long story. It all started back in, I don't know, 2007 or something like that. Me and the drummer Pekka, we wanted to. The black metal has always been a huge part of our lives, and we wanted to do something similar. And back then, we thought that we don't want to have a kind of typical name, if you will. More like something uncommon, maybe something mysterious. And after a little searching, I ended up with a Legend of Dracula. Everybody knows that. And referring to Dracula in the band name wasn't something we wanted to do. So we started digging a little bit deeper and ended up having a Romanian name for the band. And the band name actually means the grave of Snagov, which is, as they say, it's the place where Dracula was buried. So, having the name in the Romanian language and referring to that specific grave was something we ended up with. And actually, the first album, there are themes in the songs on the first album that refer to the legend of Dracula, and we started to write the music in evolving around the horror stories and stuff like that. But since then, I would have to admit that this decision was never. We didn't think it through. That, we didn't realize that we might not want to stick around with this theme for 10 years or even more. And at the moment, our lyrical themes are very much different than horror stories and stuff like that. So definitely.
Thank God.
So it's more like suitable for album name or the song name rather than...
Correct. But we decided to stay with it because we've already done a couple of albums, played a number of gigs, so why change it?
Now I have to ask, because obviously throughout the whole history of black metal, vampires and especially Dracula has been one of those topics. Transylvania. Many bands have either directly approached the very topic about Dracula as a real person and also as a kind of a gothic horror story character. And of course that has been made into movies and games and horror stories. What is so goddamn fascinating about this Transylvanian person of history or otherwise that it has to come into, hey, let's write a story about this guy?
I know. Personally, the movie from 1992, Dracula, that was a huge impact when I was a kid. And of course, I bet some part of it come from listening to Cradle of Filth, for example. The albums, they had a huge influence on this for me when I was a kid or younger. And it's mythical, it's dark, it's fascinating. It's a classic. It's
I don't know. Right, you tell something.
Okay, you mentioned the lyrical content being very different nowadays. I checked it up quickly on Metal Archives, and it basically sums up your lyrical content as blasphemy and anti-religion, if I remember correctly. How accurately does it describe the content of your lyrical output?
It is partly correct. We have always done, and so far we have criticized religion, organized religions. We have attacked against Islam, Christianity, and whatnot. But also, well, like I said, in the early albums we had the horror stories, yet there was kind of an anti-religious take on that horror story, so it was never just a horror story. On the later albums, we've been exploring humanity, humankind, how stupid are we, at the end of the day as humans, things like that. But still, we attack the organized religions in a very furious way.
This is also something that I've noticed in recent years. Back in especially 90s and 80s, it was mostly about Christianity. Later on, it became something like Abrahamic religions, mostly, of course, once again, Christianity, Islam, and of course, Judaism. Well, everything more or less related to that. But sometimes, or more often, it seems, Oriental religions, even like Indian religions, they kind of get away with it. Why is that? Do you think there's a reason why certain area, mostly Middle Eastern areas and places like that, are more often targeted as like anti-religious themes rather than go all around the globe, so to speak?
Yeah, good question.
Is it that like a spiritual wife? Sorry, but may say, but quite often you think like these Oriental, religions are like a spiritual, like it's like more like floating somewhere and like a philosophic, state of mind.
So it's not so much around a god or gods.
It's not like a predestinated, you have to do this and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's like
yeah, that's a good point. Definitely a good point. The other thing that came to my mind is that, for example, the religions you mentioned they are further away from us. They are not touching our everyday lives. It's easier to get annoyed on stuff that gets pushed on your face.
Like rub your face, like take this God into your heart.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
And I would say in Finland, definitely Christianity and Islam are the religions that you see daily everywhere. Even though Islam is not a religion that is native to Finland, but still it is. I don't want to get political, but it's.
You are
it's getting,
yeah. Stop it. Yeah.
So it's getting closer.
So good to say, it's not so much about politics, but it's more about how it affects society in terms of people-to-people, everyday life, and all that stuff. Yeah. So basically, values and ideals.
Yeah, I don't think we need any more organized religions in this country. That's kind of the bottom line.
And you are not a preacher man, per se.
I think.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this, that, every now and then when religion is brought to the table and people say it's about, how oppressing the people of God or gods are, and etc. But we also have to remember that they have a big part of the political force, but also a lot to do with monetary issues. I mean, for example, this is something that people outside Finland might not know, but for example, in Finland, particularly here in Turku as well, the church owns a lot of places. So basically it's a very, very much a financial force to reckon with. Not only political, not only a societal things. So when all these kind of get messed up together, linked, connected and all that stuff, it affects us so many ways. Do you think this all matters, or is it just some of these areas that affect us more?
Well, a tough one. I really
as a band or as a person?
Well, either way.
Okay.
It's
a different question, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Like you said, it's a huge thing we are talking about. It has many impacts on many directions. If you, for example, remove Christianity completely from this country now, the consequences would be
big,
yeah, maybe even catastrophic. Who knows? It's a scenario that cannot be
simplified too much.
Yeah. So, in that sense, I would. What I would like to see less is the part where the government and the religion go hand to hand. I would like to see that part of being separated more. And if there is a group somewhere, let's say we have a group of Christians somewhere, worshipping their God or doing whatever they want, let them be. It's all right. It doesn't bother me. But as long as it is that big part of this society, there are downsides in this equation that might be better to reconsider.
All right, I'll use this as a part to describe a little bit what I mean by this question is. Like, for example, because of every company is legally tied and connected to this Christian system, which is then once again, kind of a married to government, every company is forced to pay taxes. So, let me put it this way. You have AntiChristianity Incorporated. You would still pay taxes to Christian church. Also, you have daycare parts or whatever which are operated by the church. So basically, as a heathen, as a pagan, as a non-Christian member, you might be suddenly an outcast. You're not able to bring your kids to that part. Not some people care, but these are the kind of things which kind of affect the whole deal. And also because, this was more in the past, but just to sum up these kind of things which mean here, is like, whenever you wanted to get buried, not necessarily you might be just like, okay, give my bones to my band members, but say your grandparents, you want to have them a great slot, a place to be buried. If you were not part of the church, you would basically be paying more, because it is the church taking care of those graves as a monopoly. And this brings it all together. It's not just about how much faith you have. It's more about how financially they kind of have power on you, like puppets in a puppeteer situation.
Correct.
And I don't know how many bands nowadays think about this, because it seems like when people are in their 20s, being there, done that, it was all about the church and the faith and like, fuck you, you're invaders in this country, we're pagans, we're heathens, we have no part in your faith. And as you get older, you kind of start to realize the whole fucking deal here, that it's way more than just, being a blind faith.
But what can you do basically? As an individual, you can, you have a choice not to pay the, church tax or what it's called. But if you work in a company, what the hell are you gonna do?
Exactly, and then it becomes a part of the political deal.
Exactly.
So, do you ever feel like you're kind of trapped in this certain kind of hypocrisy with the faith? You have to kind of show the middle fingers, but still you kind of have to, like, indirectly pay the taxes, because you work for a company, and your company, being a big ass whatever, kind of pays the taxes, and you're like, fuck.
Well, what the fuck, of course,
But you mentioned you're not political, but do you have to think about these things, or is it working on, like you said, walking on thin ice when you write lyrics down and you put it all together?
It is very much walking on a thin ice and trying to avoid all the political context in all sense. Mormant de Snagov has never been a political band, and at this point I don't see any future of us being a political band. Of course, all of us probably have a political opinion, but keeping that separated out of the music, I think it works pretty fine.
Talking about politics then, and nowadays it seems, especially people from, say, on the other side of the world, see very, very black and white, like it's like Republic or Democrats, it's right wing or left wing. And in Finland it seems often so ridiculous that bands are kind of boxed into being neo-Nazi worshipping or right-wing bands if they're not outright left-wing bands. And bands that are also apolitical or very unpolitical by nature are also often put into boxes based how they look on stage, what kind of statements they make in interviews, what kind of lyrics they have, even what kind of band shirts they might have been wearing.
Yeah.
What do you think about these forceful politicized views?
That's so bullshit, because what the fuck, the metal community, we are liberal, we embrace every fucking values you have. It's not a matter of I don't know, which kind of political values other bands here have, you know. In our community, we embrace each other, you know. It's not about political views per se. So, you know, I don't know what you think, but you know,
it's like it's gone way too far.
Exactly.
Yeah. But how to stop it? Because at the moment it looks like probably partly because of internet, things tend to go further and further. So it seems hard to see any scenario where all this would stop.
Now, in a world where I see this like almost daily basis, whenever I read a comment on a video I have done, especially if it's an interview with a band that might have something to say about this matter, might not be a political band, but it doesn't really matter. Whenever there was a person, today I witnessed one of those. So a person is like, why are you defending these guys? These are right-wing or whatever. And I'm like, no, they are not. I know them personally. I have never read or seen an interview where the band says something political. They're not maybe political opinions or whatever. But then people play this ultimate card on the table. You're against us or with us.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that when you get these kind of accusations like, if you're not fighting those Nazis, you're part of the problem?
Yeah, the cancel culture. Yeah.
What do you think about it?
Embrace that. No, that was a sarcasm. So.
Yeah,
Embrace that was sarcasm.
It is sarcasm. But what do you think about this kind of black and white thinking that seems to occupy metal community, especially the black metal scene?
Well, I usually, when this topic comes up, it does every now and then, I usually think and try to explain it through my record collection. I'm a record enthusiast. I like to buy CDs, vinyls, everything. I have a huge amount of records in my collection, and definitely I do not agree 100% on all of the lyrics that are in that collection. So in that sense, I might have there an album or two from the bands that some might consider a Nazi band, I don't know. But on the other side, there are even pure black metal bands that I might not definitely agree on what they write on the lyrics, but I still enjoy their stuff, what they're doing. I might agree some part of the lyrics, but that doesn't stop me on listening to the lyrics.
Exactly. And how would you know before you buy the CD if it's not a known band? What are the lyrical content about? So should you burn the CD after you hear, hey, this is a little bit similar to, some might say, you know, right-wing political, you know, something. What the fuck? Yeah. Should you burn the CD? Of course not.
And take a random power metal band, or even, I don't know, Iron Maiden. Some of those guys are Christians. They don't write about it. Or Alice Cooper. I love Alice Cooper. And Megadeth. One of
Tom Mariah is a Catholic, and nobody knows that, you know.
Nobody.
No, yeah, but
I know what you mean. Yeah, and this is exactly what I mean. Like, I was wondering, because this kind of got into my mind a couple of days ago when I was really pondering about this topic, seeing a lot of comments. Now, I'm not trying to defend anybody here, mind you, dear audience. But the thing here is, if you have friends, for example, or you like bands which have, say, right-wing connotations, people are like, okay, you're guilty by affiliation. How come it never happens the other way? It's like, if you like Mormant de, you're Antifa member. I mean, that's kind of ponders me because, for example, I could be listening to the very same day an NSBM band. Well, I don't really like NSBM bands, but that's a different topic. Basically, I could be listening back to back some NSBM band and Mormant de, or Gold Thrower, or say Satanic War Master. And so, should I just cut one of my arms?
Yeah.
And how can you have like bands like Satanic War Master and Megadeth side by side in your collection and pick one of those?
You have a weird way of putting albums in the collection. Megadeth is just
I have a very small
You
collection.
should see the collection, you know.
Yeah, it starts with Alice Cooper, it goes Megadeth, Satanic War Master, Iron Maiden. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all the albums I have.
Oh my god.
Okay, enough of political and religious talk. We haven't really talked about your music. And you mentioned that you have fourth album coming out. Your previous one was 2018, if I recall correctly. So it's been more than 3 years since that was put out. And this is now in the making. By the time of this video comes out, we don't know yet if it's going to be out. But what kind of plans you have for the album, and what should we expect from the album?
It kicks ass.
Well, this time we took a very different approach on writing. Well, not exactly writing, but maybe producing the music. The writing process of the fourth album was pretty much the same as it used to be. I brought the riffs to the rehearsal place and we started putting it all together. It was probably Steelfest, I don't know, 2019 or something. We were there with Ville, and I played some of the early demos to him. And like I said, I've known this guy for long enough time, and we've been always very honest with each other. And the game between us two has always been that we can say to each other whatever we like, and no one gets offended. Like,
That's
and he said in a car where we were driving to Steelfest that these songs are pretty good, but they could be better. And I was like, yeah, you think so? And he said, hey, just out of the blue, would you mind me if I help you guys a little bit? And after a little bit of thinking, we thought that it might be a good idea to have external producers in the album, and it was a huge step to myself personally, because all the songs were mine, all the lyrics were mine, and I had to throw them on the table
to be challenged.
Yeah, and that was a huge. I actually had to think about it for 6 months before I was ready for that challenge. Yeah, and that experience was outstanding. It was Ville brought so many good ideas, comments on the music.
Basically, I was a little bit of an asshole, but you have to be.
You have to be an asshole a little bit if you're a producer.
Not just make your comment.
If you're too much a nice guy, nothing really happens.
Hey, that's right, exactly.
And there was a couple of serious conversations between the production process. We did pre-production. We organized some of the songs pretty thoroughly from the beginning, and the way of working, it was actually very rewarding. I think all of us like that way, and honestly, well, everybody says our latest album is the best, you know the game, but this time it honestly feels that we have achieved something that we never achieved before. All the crap riffs, all the riffs that are not good enough to be
the nonsense parts,
thrown out.
There were quite many nonsense parts, back in the days.
Yeah. So that was a very different process, and Ville was with us all the way from the pre-production into the actual recording sessions. He was there at all times, telling things, and he was back then. He was totally like an outsider, and he had a broader view of the big picture that we ourselves probably didn't have, because we were quite deep, quite close in the...
I didn't have any part of the song making, so basically I didn't have any kind of, like a subjective view of the riff, saying this is mine, this is not mine, I was totally, objective, outside, what the fuck, this is good, this is not good. I didn't know who came up with the idea of this and this riff. So it was not quite purifying for you, I think.
It was, and before we started this process, we agreed with each other that, like I said, we've known each other for too long time, but still we have to make the rules clear that this is about the music, this is not personal, no one gets offended.
Exactly.
And it worked pretty well. I almost got offended.
But of course.
I forgive you.
Really?
That was actually something that I wanted to ask. Like, did you get hurt like emotionally, because your things, your work had to be laid on the table and chopped to pieces, analyzed, and then get rid of the fat, so to speak.
There were a couple of sessions that were really, really hard for myself. I need to admit it. And I probably was an asshole for a moment or two.
It was quite intense, you know, sometimes, you know, so...
But it was all for the...
You can imagine, you know, that, you know, when you are discussing, you know, what the fuck, you know, you have come up with the idea, and I say like, but somebody says, because we were like an open, you know, room where everybody can say what he wants, you know. So what the fuck? This sucks. And you think, this is my best idea, you know. But what the fuck? You think, you know, what this hurts? Hurts like hell. Oh my god. They don't appreciate my riffs, you know.
What the hell is wrong with this guy? It is
My bad, mate. What the fuck?
Alright, so how to describe the music? Now you have explained me how you kind of produce, how it was mentally and all that stuff, but if you had to describe your music, imagine like writing down a promotional letter for the media. So our new album is like...
Well, if you look at our albums from the first one and start listening, then the music has changed on each album a little bit. We have gone to a more melodic approach on each of our albums.
Have you gone softer?
Yes, we have. I'm ashamed to admit, but yes, we have. And this time we went even softer. So
But
this
the
is
extreme parts are still there, you know.
the extra
So
parts
the
are still
variety
there.
of the spectrum is like widening. Like
Correct. Yeah. The core is still very extreme. We have couple of very angry songs, very fast-paced songs on it. But we went down a little bit to the mid-tempo and have a couple of even two very slow songs in the very melodic songs in the.
But no clean vocals or stuff like that, you know. No pop songs, you know.
Of course, it kind of feels pop music to ourselves because we kind of like to think it more the extreme ways, but it's still extreme metal, definitely.
Yeah.
But more melodic, we try to widen the spectrum to all directions again. We've been trying to do that a lot.
For example, the guitar work is like you have dual solos, you know, going harmony, but it's not like they're Iron Maiden, you know, solos. They're like, how do you say, more complex.
More complex, yeah.
So much, you know.
This brings me to the very next question, and it is, since you have been more than 10 years in the making, in the business with this particular band, how much has song and lyrics writing changed over the years? You're not in your 20s anymore, but in your 40s, give or take. So how different it is to write down lyrics from the older perspective versus being an angry kid?
I think it was
Angry middle-aged dude.
I think it was easier back then when I was younger because there was kind of the content of the lyrics wasn't that deep, but it was kind of easier to just throw it on the paper and have it there. Now I might overthink these lyrics a little bit, and in that sense it is hard to write. And looking towards the future when we start to do more new material, I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm a bit terrified.
Hopefully nothing, you know, that it's similar to Gandalf or that kind of.
No, we don't want to go blind guardian, even though it's a great band.
Yeah.
But it's become harder. Maybe if I'm more like aware of what I would like it to be, or maybe if I'm not too, but maybe more. What's the word? What I'm trying to say?
You are so mature.
Yep, and
Synonym for middle age.
yeah, trying to gain more.
Okay. Hey, that's
And
good.
step up the level each time. So it's
You have your enthusiasm left.
Like, definitely.
In my July opinion video, one of them, I discussed that the whole metal community, active bands especially, not so much fans, it's become older and older, and it seems like we're getting more and more retired people because of deaths and just being too goddamn old. And it seems like metal especially is dominated by bands which are filled with old farts. Let's be honest about it. Bands like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Black Sabbath especially, Metallica, things like that are almost people in the age of retirement. Now even old black metal names are reaching their 50s, some might already, I don't know, closer to 60s. So it becomes old man's game versus what it used to be. Back in the early 90s when second wave of black metal started to bloom, it was all about teenagers, people of 15 years, 20 years old, having angry thoughts, angry at Christianity, angry at society, and they were penniless. Now you have old people, or well, middle-aged people who have decent income, no monetary problems, or not angry at some ex-girlfriend who left with the older guy who was cooler and had a car. I mean, the whole deal is very, very different. How do you get that passion now that you've seen the whole game change? You're not so much anymore that young kid yelling at the older society, but that old man yelling at the cloud.
But I think the passion was always there, but how come if you're, when you were a young kid, you had a passion. And of course, people get older, you still have the passion. But how come the young kids nowadays have the passion? I don't know. Because it's not the same. You know what I mean? Because back in the days, like you said, it was a totally different story. I don't know.
Maybe the passion comes from different sources nowadays. I don't know. Well, many of us might have kids, and you probably see the world, and you see maybe the world in a different way. You kind of might be seeing more of the bigger picture than you used to see when you were back in the day.
Yeah, instead of a small community, you see first towns, then cities, then countries,
Correct.
Then the whole global thing,
And
then the cosmos, and then you don't care.
And that's not, that's not a word for passion. I don't even know.
But what I was going towards was that you probably see different angles, maybe through your kids. You might see some annoying little things that maybe somebody was singing some religious songs in the school or things like that might annoy you and then give you inspiration of what you want to say.
How you want to change the world, maybe?
Something like possibly. Well, many few of us can do a little alone, changing the world, but if I'm trying to do at least something to change the world.
Well, talking of which, if you could change one thing with the band, like anything, literally anything, like you could be the omnipotent force, but you could change only one thing.
The band.
As a band, what would you change?
You mean in this band?
This particular band, yes.
Okay, it would be nice if I could drink 10 beers more before a gig.
That is the omnipotent.
Yeah. Still play like.
What about you, Miska? What would you
I would
change?
definitely force the other two guys to use in-ear monitors. Me and the drummer use the in-ear monitors.
So instead of like, let's remove Christianity, no, I want to drink more. I want to. Very, very passionate, very high goals you have.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
Hey, for the passionate, side, if this is going to be on a TikTok, then the metal community will explode as a passionate way. You know what I mean? Because there is where the next generations are. I think, I don't know, but my daughter at least is there.
and you I bet.
Ah, no, I don't know.
Is it more like kids are on the TikTok and whatever guys are on Pornhub? Okay, let's not go there. That's the difference of being 40 and 14.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, talking about very different topics, we mentioned these social media sites and whatever services, and it's often seen that, okay, labels and review persons, they are the gatekeepers of any kind of music. But what reality happens to be is more like sites, like whether they accept your band there. We have seen cancellations or removals on sites such as Bandcamp. We've seen some bands removed from PayPal and all that stuff, sometimes because of these certain kind of lyrics or political statements. But what do you think about this so-called gatekeeping culture, be it labels or reviewers or services? Is that mandatory evil or is it something good?
It's horrible, but I will get you a beer and you can answer this.
Because it is. There are two sides on this coin. Because the gatekeepers are needed, because I think none of us want every single band everywhere to put their music available everywhere. Because already the amount of music available is too large to handle, too hard. No one can listen to that amount of music, even in the metal or even in the black metal. Go to smaller context. So in that sense, a little bit of gatekeeping, what goes out there and what doesn't, might be a good thing. But regarding the cancel culture, I don't like it. So removing someone's music from Bandcamp because of just single-sidedly, because they decided that this is not good, that's definitely not the way it should be. So there are two sides on that coin.
All right. Now, let's take a look in the future. What will happen now that you get your 4th album out? What will happen in a year or 5 years? Especially now that we've seen this COVID era and we don't know what will happen with gigs and fests and, well, even with albums. Where do you put yourself in, say, 1, 3 and 5 years span?
The next step is definitely to get the 4th album released. Like said, it is almost complete, a little bit of fine-tuning here or there with the cover artwork and stuff like that. So that one needs to see the daylight. And meanwhile, we've been working on getting the 4th album out. We already started writing music for the 5th album because there was nothing else to do. And Ville joined the band a couple of months ago.
Officially.
Yeah. So Ville is a talented musician, talented songwriter.
Talented motherfucker.
That one as well. So he's been bringing some new spices to our music. So we will probably be writing the next album, even if the previous album is not out yet. We are working on new material, and hopefully when the new album comes out, we hope that
it's not going to be a double album for sure.
No. We will hope that we will get the chance to play a live show.
And perhaps
album realistic, a real
we can have
album
a
realistic.
guest vocals from you.
Where did that come from?
I don't know. But the future is very much unseen and you will have to see how it plays out.
It is definitely, and what I would personally like to see is that we've seen so much effort on the new album, so it really deserves a decent album release. So we definitely hope that we will be able to do that one way or another.
All right. But before we quit and all that stuff, let you drink your beers and stuff like that. Now the audience is like, okay, why shall I start with this band, Mormant de Snagov? Which album, which EP or split or demo or even a song you would start with? Now, if you could name like one release or one song, up to you, both of you, which one would you say to the audience? Start with this one. I know it's hard to select from all your babies out there.
I would start, I would say.
You go ahead. Go first.
Is it third track, Resist? Yeah, from the third album, Resist. Third track, yeah. It's like a kicks ass like hell. We started the gig today. Was it today? Yeah.
Yes, pretty much so.
How many?
Just kidding, it's a part of the, Yeah, it's a Resist.
What about you, Miska? What would you
Well, if
recommend?
We'll pick Resist from our third album, I would say Comatose from the second album. It's a very different song, very different kind of song than what we usually. It doesn't represent us at all, but it's a good song. It's a brilliant song, I would say.
All right. Final question. Word to the wise. If you could give the audience some kind of a tip or hint or lesson from the older you, what would you say? Any kind of word of wisdom or word of stupidness, if you prefer that way.
The earlier you start saving, the richer you will be when you are retiring. Start saving early.
Good financial tip.
Yeah, exactly.
What about you?
Tough one. Do not save, but instead spend money on records.
And
because not only records, because that is where the artist gets
The devil
a little
lives
bit
here.
of money.
Yeah, but you like the devil. Don't you like the devil?
Forget all the Spotify and streaming stuff. You can use that when you travel the bus with your cell phone, but you need to have physical records. Buy physical records, people.
And enjoy the devil.
That is exactly what I'm saying. You know how I do reviews and stuff like that. Go for the physical, forget about it. Unless, especially, you're on the go. Anyway, this is Mormant de Snagov from Turku, Finland. Go check it out. Go start with those songs these guys recommended you. And don't tell me you didn't hear about this new band. The one that has been here for quite a while. So take care. Check them out, and I hope you like it. And should you have some more questions for these young gentlemen, I will be happy to pass them on to these guys if you just comment on the comment box below. Meanwhile, take care, stay metal, stay true. Rauta signing out.
Yes! Woo! Loistavaa. Tervetuloa.
Peace. Otan ne takaisin.